How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. I hope you had a great weekend, still trying to get the stream of the Jake Paul fight. What a garbage match that was. In any event, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number is 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. If you text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you can get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, all that fantastic stuff that I'm sure you want, that you should want. Now, we must begin with Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is very important, and I want to play you. This is David Ignatius of the Washington Post. It was on Morning Joe this morning where, yes, they have reached out to the president-elect to begin talking to him, and their viewers are outraged that a man they said was the second coming of Hitler is someone they want to break bread with. But this is David Ignatius from this morning on Morning Joe.
We're in the business of covering the world, trying to see it whole. And if people think that we are partisans on one side or another, I think in the end, their confidence in our ability to tell the truth, to do our job declines. You see that some of that in some of the poll numbers about how people feel about journalism. I don't want to add to that.
Yeah, I want to add to that, he says. So why aren't you covering Pennsylvania, David Ignatius? Morning Joe, why isn't that your lead story? You guys have lectured us for 4 years that the Republicans and Donald Trump are a unique threat to democracy, that Donald Trump is an authoritarian, a tyrant who disrespects democracy, wants to end democracy. In Pennsylvania, the Democrats are now openly, brazenly trying to steal the United States Senate election from Senator-elect Dave McCormick. The Democrat-controlled Supreme Court of Pennsylvania ruled that they cannot count ballots that are unsigned, undated, or not from people who were properly registered to vote. Keep in mind that last one. They're not allowed to count ballots from people who were not properly registered to vote. That's not me. That's the Democrat majority on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and others, Democrats are openly ignoring the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania and counting those ballots. In fact, one member of the Board of Elections said everybody breaks the law. Everybody breaks the law. So she gets to break the law because everybody gets to break the law. And these are the people who spent 4 long years telling us Donald Trump and the Republicans are a threat to democracy. The Democratic spin is, well, we have to count every vote democratically cast. The difference between democracy and mob is the rule of law. And the rule of law in Pennsylvania outlines which votes to cast and which votes to count and which votes matter and which votes don't. And they're ignoring all of those things in the name of counting all the ballots. The ballots from the Russians? I mean, 8 years ago, you guys told us the Russians stole the election. We don't know that some of the people voting in Pennsylvania whose votes they're counting actually aren't people who aren't even legal American citizens. But if they vote Democrat, the Democrats say that's okay. And they're real quiet about this on MSNBC. They're pretty quiet about it on CNN as well. They're quiet about it on the editorial pages of the New York Times and the Washington Post that spent 4 years lecturing us about preserving our democracy and saving the rule of law. And here are the Democrats in Pennsylvania openly defying the Democrat-controlled Pennsylvania Supreme Court's ruling. Now, let's back up. The reason that Pennsylvania is still counting votes actually, in part, is the blame of the Republicans. It's true. We got to be intellectually honest about this to get to what's happening now. A law was proposed in Pennsylvania that was killed by the Republican majority in the Pennsylvania legislature that would have allowed the processing of absentee ballots before Election Day. They would have essentially adopted the model from Florida and what Georgia has now deployed. Essentially, what it does is you don't count the votes until Election Day, but you can process the ballots. So you can make sure that the voters are legitimate and the vote is lawfully to be cast and run it through a scanner, even though you can't see the results. Pennsylvania Republicans said, nope, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do what Florida did. We don't want to do what Georgia did. The rule in Pennsylvania is you cannot even begin to process the ballots until 7 a.m. on the day of the election. That means that in Pennsylvania, you're not allowed to even look at the absentee ballot and say, can this absentee ballot be counted until beginning at 7 a.m. on Election Day. That's why the process takes so long, and it was the Republicans to blame. The Democrats agreed to adopt Ron DeSantis' rules in Florida, and the Pennsylvania Republicans, who also, by the way, make you go to special stores to buy beer, said, no, you're not allowed to do that. Pennsylvania is one of those weird states where there are only certain stores open at certain times of day where you're allowed to buy beer of limited quantities. It's a very weird state. Wonderful state, wonderful people, but also stupid laws. And it was the Republicans who blocked this one. So you can't even begin to process the absentee ballots. Well, now here's the thing. Pennsylvania voters have a habit of casting their absentee ballots and then showing up on Election Day. I don't know why that is, but Pennsylvania disproportionately does that. So, in addition to all the absentee ballots being processed on Election Day, you got a bunch of people who show up to vote on Election Day who cast an absentee ballot. In Pennsylvania, my understanding is there are about 250,000 people who cast an absentee ballot and then showed up on Election Day to vote. And they have to vote by a provisional ballot. A provisional ballot is a ballot where you fill out the ballot form like it's an absentee ballot, and that ballot is not allowed to be cast unless they can find your absentee ballot and pull it out of the system or make sure your absentee ballot didn't come in. Well, what about absentee ballots that were cast on Election Day? So they were postmarked Election Day and showed up a week later. There's the problem. Those absentee ballots can still be counted, so the provisional ballots cannot be processed until after the absentee ballots have had time to come in. Is that not the most confusing thing you've heard? That's Pennsylvania. Oh, and by the way, every county in Pennsylvania has a different method of counting votes. Some are one machine, some are another machine, some are paper ballots. Is it not all very confusing to you? That's Pennsylvania. And the Republicans and Democrats together have made that system that way. But that's no excuse for a court order from the state's highest court saying you cannot count an absentee ballot if it wasn't dated. That's express law in Pennsylvania. In fact, the ballot form says you must date the ballot, and some people have chosen not to. And that's not the inside envelope with the ballot, but the outside envelope that you fill out. For those of you who've never cast an absentee ballot, I guess I should do this for you. Most of you probably have never cast an absentee ballot. An absentee ballot comes in 3 envelopes. There's the outer envelope that comes to you that contains the 2 interior envelopes and the ballot. When you open that out external ballot envelope, you can throw it away. And then you have 2 envelopes and a ballot. You fill out the ballot. You fold up the ballot and you put it into an envelope that says absentee ballot only. So you put that ballot in the envelope that says absentee ballot only, and you seal that envelope. And you put that envelope in the second envelope. And the second envelope has a big flap on the back of it. And you have to fill up your name and your address. You got to have your signature, and you must date it. And on that envelope, you put the stamp, and it goes to the mailbox. And what happens is when the ballots come in to ensure anonymity, they first look at the form on the back of the ballot. Was it dated? Is there a postmark on the envelope? Does the signature match the voter registration card? Is all the information correct? If they say yes, they rip the flap off so that they can take the interior envelope out. And that interior envelope is the one with the absentee ballot in it. And they set it aside. And now, once that ballot's removed from the exterior envelope, no one knows whose ballot that is. You have no idea whose name, who cast that ballot. So you can't take that ballot envelope and stick it into a stack by itself until you verify the information on the outer envelope. And the law in Pennsylvania says it's got to be postmarked and it's got to be signed and it's got to be dated. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has said the same thing. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court went one step further and said if you can't verify that the person appropriately registered to vote, you cannot count it. Because in the United States of America, you have to be registered to vote in order to vote. You can't just show up and cast a ballot. We got to know who you are. And in Pennsylvania, county Democrats have said, screw all that. We're just going to count the votes. We're going to count them all. We don't care if they have a postmark. We don't care if they are signed. We don't care if they're from a legally registered voter. We're going to count all the ballots. And what that's done is it hasn't defeated Dave McCormick. It's made the margin so small that he can go into a recount. Well, how are we going to separate out now all of those ballots that should not have been counted in the first time? We don't know whose they are now. They've removed them from the external envelope. They're in the pool of absentee ballots. We don't know. They sowed chaos into the system. Now, here's the thing. It does not look like there are enough outstanding ballots to overthrow the election. There were just enough to get it into a recount. But Pennsylvania also has another funny law. One that Democrats and Republicans alike in Pennsylvania have refused to change. In Pennsylvania, there's no ballot count. There's no ballot report. You see, if you go to Gwinnett County, Georgia, or Maricopa County, Arizona, the county can tell you, here's how many ballots we sent out, here's how many ballots we've received, here's how many we haven't counted, here's how many we have counted, here's how many we have left to count. They don't do that in any county in Pennsylvania. So no one really knows how many ballots were sent out and how many ballots came in and how many have been counted and how many are left to be counted. The speculation, credible speculation, is there are not enough ballots left to throw the election into doubt. But they're trying. And if this was a Republican that had done this, Morning Joe would not be talking about how members of the media need to not be fair and balanced and not pick sides. They would be talking about Republicans are trying to steal a Senate election. CNN would be talking about Republicans are trying to steal a Senate election. The New York Times and the Wall Street Journal would be outraged, their editorial voices filled with outrage over the theft of democracy in Pennsylvania. All of them are silent today. Instead, they're doing their internal soul reflecting of why don't people believe us anymore? Why don't people trust us? Here's an example of why. You spent 4 years lecturing us on how vital democracy is to this country and how vital the rule of law is to this country and how Donald Trump would upend the rule of law and threaten our democracy, and yet it's the Democrats doing it in Pennsylvania, and you people don't care. You don't care. You're not grilling these people about counting ballots the Supreme Court said not to count. You're not grilling these people about their poor handling of the ballots. You're not grilling them about their setup. You're not doing any of that. You would do it if the Republicans were in charge, and you know darn well you would. The Democrats in Pennsylvania are trying to steal an election, and they're brazen about it, and their accomplices in the media who have been wringing their hands about threats to democracy are okay with it because it's all about power, and the Democrats are on the verge of losing it. And the irony here as well is that they're going to lose this election, and even if they were somehow to be able to pull it out and steal it and win it, they won't get a Senate majority, and the Republicans in the Senate can refuse to seat Bob Casey, given what the Democrats in Pennsylvania have done to the rule of law. And then you and I both know everybody in the media will be upset, but they're not upset so long as it's the Democrats trying to steal the election. Greetings. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. Had a great time in Las Vegas. Man, I got to tell you guys, and listen, I realize it's a unique connection with listeners, but I got lit on fire by people this weekend. By some of you, and look, I say this lovingly, I did email you. Why aren't you talking about the Pennsylvania situation? My opening monologue. I got emails about it all weekend. Why are you ignoring it? Why aren't you doing this? Blah, 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 blah. Y'all, hello. I took a day off work. Had a great listener event Friday in Las Vegas, and then I unplugged for a couple of days. And when I opened my laptop on Sunday night, there were, why aren't you talking about this? Why haven't you sent out an email? Why? Because I'm on vacation. No rest for the weary. I love that you guys love that I chime in on something. But occasionally, for my own mental health, I must take a day off. And I watched the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight on Friday night. Philip and I actually watched another fight first. This was the couple behind us at the Davidoff Cigar Bar in Las Vegas. They were yelling at each other. It got very uncomfortable. I was afraid they were going to come to blows. Thankfully, they didn't. But then the waitress came out, and she was like, did he lay a hand on her? Did he touch her? We're like, no. And even if he did, we're not going to stick around and be witnesses in your court case. But he didn't. In fact, he even left her cell phone there. And when the girlfriend, I guess, apparently they were regulars. The girlfriend was then convinced he stole her cell phone, and he comes back and calls her a few more choice words and holds her phone up from the table. And then she's upset that he's grabbed her phone off the table. She thought he had taken it away. He was just showing her that it was there. And then after it's all over, she's got to stand by Philip and me. He's like, he disrespected me. Y'all saw that he disrespected me. I will not be disrespected. We're like, God bless you for standing up for yourself. But leave us alone, please. We want to watch the fight. And the Netflix couldn't handle the load. Is it going to be able to handle the NFL games? I don't know. But apparently 80 some odd million people, 60 to 80 million people attempted to stream that fight. And it was pathetic. 8 rounds of slapping each other and dodging each other. And poor old Tyson was just, they scheduled it past his bedtime, and it looked like Jake Paul was taking it easy on him. They scheduled Jake Paul to fight Jimmy Carter next. And that was just what a pathetic attention grab. And we all watched it, didn't we? Vision Computers want your attention, and they should have it because they can build you a great computer, and then they can give you their 5-star support. Y'all, Vision is so good. And they help businesses around the country. They can help your business. They can help you wherever you are in the country. They give you a special phone number. You can call them. 15 extra less. Get the answer to your question about your computer. If it doesn't seem to be working right, if you don't know how to do something, if you've lost a file, you need to navigate it. They can even remote in to your computer. They can help you with your email support, your printer support, you name it. Now, if you buy a computer from Vision, you get this for free. But for just $179 a year, you don't have to have bought a computer from Vision to get their 5-star tech support. And go online and look. They've got thousands of 5-star reviews. My family use Vision Computers. You can too. Go to 404-COMPUTE. Call them at 404-COMPUTER. Go to visioncomputers.com. Tell them Eric sent you. You're going to save even more money. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Let Vision service your computers, build your computer, whatever you need tech-wise. 404-COMPUTE. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America, and I am delighted to have you with me. This is the difficult part of the show for some of you. You're not going to be happy with me, and that's okay. I'm used to making everybody on all sides mad, and it's kind of what I do. Ladies and gentlemen, if you read my morning email, you know exactly where I'm going. Worldview. Worldview matters. We don't talk enough about worldviews, but we need to talk about what a worldview is. A worldview is how you see, understand, comprehend, and process the world around you in order to live your life, navigate the moments of this world, and make decisions. My worldview is very simple. I am a simple man. I believe there is a heaven, and I believe there is a hell, and I believe there will be a day of judgment before the Lord God Almighty. and I will be held to account for my sins. And that if I believe in God through Christ, he will regenerate me, and I will be spared the fires of hell, not because I did anything, but because he did everything. And so when I look at the world and I look at the ups and downs of the world and I look at the questions of the world, I don't really ask what would Jesus do per se. I look at in my worldview, what is right. And oftentimes what you find in the world when that's your worldview is that what the world says is right, you find wrong. What the world says is wrong, you find right. Turning the other cheek is not a worldly thing. Laying down your life for someone else, it's not a worldly thing. That's my worldview. My worldview is as a Christian. A progressive atheist has a different worldview. A progressive atheist lives their life in a way that says this is the only heaven we're going to have, and so we must make it, and we must take power to build a heaven on earth because there is no real heaven. The closest we're going to come is to what we do with this world. And so even you knuckle draggers and mouth breathers, we got to shut you up because we got to build a utopia here. You profess Jesus, but he's a myth, but reality is real and here and now, and we're going to build it. By God, yes, we are. And that's why you got to have abortion rights, because a woman can't live her best life now if she's shackled to a baby. We got to allow her to kill the kid so she can continue on with her life, so she can have her cake and eat it too. Have sex, kill the kid, keep a job, bring the money in. That's the progressive atheist worldview. We're going to have utopia whether you like it or not. In the same way, if you're pro-life, you believe life begins at conception, you're going to see the world in a different way from the people who believe that life begins when you say it does. You're going to value, for example, a tax policy that would allow a pregnant mother a child tax credit because she's with child. You know, progressives don't like to give the child tax credit if you're pregnant. The child's got to be born because otherwise they'd have to recognize that the fetus is actually a child. You're going to redo education policies because you're going to free up parents to make the best education decision for their children, among other things. The worldview of someone who's pro-life is vastly different from someone who's pro-abortion. Someone with a pro-abortion worldview believes that abortion is a fundamental right for a woman, that she should be able to control her life in such a way that if she wants to kill the kid to advance her career so she doesn't have to take time off work, that she should be able to do it. I'm always amazed when people say, you pro-lifers, you know, you're going to have to start making the man pay for child support if you extend this belief that the child is a child in womb. Like, yes, we believe that a man should have to take care of the mother and child. What's wild is that if you're pro-life, you believe these things. If you're pro-choice, you've endowed women with the power where they can make or break a man. What do I mean by that? Very easy. If I were to get a woman pregnant, I would have no say on whether or not she decided to have the abortion. Although there's plenty of evidence that men use abortion and pressure for abortion on women. But I have no say. And so that woman can either make me pay for an abortion if she wants to at all, or make me pay child support until that child is 18 years old. I have no say in the matter. If I say kill the kid, I don't want to pay child support, she can say, nope, I'm going to make you pay child support. Now, I wouldn't do that, but it gives women more power over men. And the pro-abortionists are fine with it. Worldview matters. Your worldview, if you believe God is sovereign, matters a great deal more than if you believe you yourself are sovereign. You may throw yourself into despair. You can handle the world a lot easier when you believe all things work for the good of those called according to his purpose. When things don't go your way, you know God's got a plan and you're still going to be okay. That's why people on the left are thrown to despair. They think we are our gods and we're losing control of things. Worldview matters. And because worldview matters, that is why the Senate Republicans should kill the nomination of Robert Kennedy Jr., because his worldview is not a worldview that any Bible-believing Christian should support. He's a progressive, pro-abortion, environmental nut job that you people only like because he cares about what's put in our food, and there are plenty of other people out there who do, who never allegedly drove their wives to commit suicide, Do you remember this is the man you're dealing with? This is a man who openly flouted his relationship with his second wife. She went into depression, despair, and dependency, and ultimately, after he decided to divorce her, committed suicide after finding his journal where he documented after her child was born, how he began regularly having an affair with 37 different women, sleeping with multiple different women, sometimes multiple women on the same day. He sent pictures of his sexual conquest naked to his friends to document his exploits. And when he decided to divorce his wife, despite never in his journal where he documented his sexual conquests and his wife and his kids, never worrying about her health, never worrying about her dependency, never worrying about her depression, somehow all of a sudden she's this abusive, terrible wife. He needs a restraining order from her. And she hanged herself. And even though he filed for divorce from her, he refused to allow her family to bury her. Do you know what Robert Kennedy did to his soon-to-be ex-wife who committed suicide after reading about his 37 sexual exploits? He buried her in the family plot, and after the ceremony was over, dug her up and moved her body out of the family plot. That's the man some of you think is qualified to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And that's not just any position in the federal government. The Secretary of Health and Human Services oversees 1/4 of the spending of the entire discretionary budget of the United States government. Did you know that? An entire quarter of the federal budget, outside of Social Security, Medicare, and debt service payments, a quarter of the federal budget is run through the Department of Health and Human Services. And you want to put a pro-abortion, Kennedy progressive womanizer in charge of that position because he questions COVID vaccine and thinks we shouldn't have red dye number 5 in food. Oh my gosh. Is there not a single person on planet Earth who did not drive his wife to despair, divorce her, and then she commits suicide, and he won't even give her family the body? Is there not a single person alive who could fill that job other than a Kennedy kook? Personnel is policy. Personnel is policy. And what Donald Trump has decided to do with the Secretary of Health and Human Services is designate the personnel who is a pro-abortion advocate, who, by the way, also believes in gun control. And guess which cabinet position oversees the data on gun deaths? Why, yes, that would happen to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So not only does Donald Trump want to put a gun control zealot in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services, he wants to put an abortion advocate in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services, the two issues that flow through that very department. But because he opposes red dye number 5 and thinks vaccines cause autism, boy, hummer John, golly gee, that's just perfect. We can put him in charge of it. Never mind his worldview. Never mind his character, never mind his dead ex-wife who didn't actually get divorced from him. Never mind all of those problems. Never mind that his sexual predilections have not been in the past, but in the here and now. Hello, Olivia Nuzzi. Although she says it wasn't physical, it was just emotional. Listen. I realize some of you agree with him on vaccines, and some of you agree with him on food. But there are plenty of other people who share those views who are not a pro-abortion progressive who Barack Obama wanted to put in charge of the Environmental Protection Agency. Some of you people lost your mind when Michelle Obama planted a garden and asked schools around the country to modify their health menus, and now you want Robert Kennedy to do what Michelle Obama did on steroids for everybody, and you're fine with it. Is it, what was it, because she had a D next to her name? Robert Kennedy had a D next to his name until this year. You changed the letter, but not the soul of the man who had 37 mistresses on his wife, and when she read the diary, handed it to her sister, said, "After I'm gone, publish it," and then hanged herself. That's the man you want in charge. That's who you want to give a power of the quarter of the federal budget to. A man who has lied repeatedly about good vaccines. A man who has driven up vaccine skepticism on the MMR vaccine, which has long been studied for whether or not it causes autism. And it has long been thoroughly rejected that it causes autism. But because some of you believe, damn the science, we're going to find the person who believes. And you know what? That's what the left does on transgenderism. You're no better than them. The left goes out and finds doctors who says, of course boys can become girls, and everybody's left says, look, we've got an expert. That's what Robert Kennedy does with all of his nutty conspiracy theories. He's unqualified to be the guy in charge of a quarter of the federal budget, particularly the department that actually collects the data on gun violence and handles abortions or pro-life policy, because he is a gun-grabbing, pro-abortion advocate of the left who is a Kennedy with the morals of the Kennedy clan, and he should be nowhere near the president's cabinet. Say what you will about all the other picks, including Matt Gaetz, and I've said much. There are plenty of people who agree with Robert Kennedy on food and food safety and reform of the pharmaceutical industry who are not Robert Kennedy. And frankly, when you look at the data, it is a terrible thing for the Republican Party to tell pro-lifers you will suck it up and take it. And it is a shame that people have attacked the former Vice President Mike Pence for raising concerns about Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s pro-abortion position, putting him in charge of the department that oversees pro-life, pro-family policies. He should not be there. But for all of those things, I don't think we should put into power a man who it is widely attributed his personal behaviors and conduct led his wife to hang herself. I'm old enough and mature enough to understand character no longer counts for anybody. And I'm old enough to recognize that sometimes you put in positions of power people who aren't fantastic people. And everybody tells me we're not there for a prophet, we're not there for a priest, we're just there for a president. That's fine. But this is a man whose personal behaviors undermined his wife. He divorced her. She discovered how many women he had cheated on her with, and she hanged herself. And even though they were divorced, it hadn't gone through yet. And so he decided he would not give her family her body, though it was clear that's what she would have wanted given the circumstances, lord it over them. This is a narcissistic, self-interested creep who does not deserve power in the federal government. And yet we're going to give it to him because he doesn't like red dye number 5. Good Lord, we really have become an amoral, immoral group of children. Between bank collapses, economic turmoil in this country, interest rates where they are, Swiss America has been warning people about a secret war on cash. They're the trusted leader in precious metals and have been for 40 years. They're rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau, and they can educate you on protecting your assets in their report, The Secret War on Cash. You can get it. It takes less than 15 minutes to read. It can save you on your retirement and finances. You can get your free copy by calling or texting 800-289-2646. The All-Out War on Cash, digital currencies included in this All-Out War on Cash. It's growing. So get the Secret War on Cash report for free. All you do, mention Eric, E-R-I-C-K, when you call or text 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. Just mention Eric, E-R-I-C-K, when you call or text 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America, and I am delighted to have you with me. My friends, would like to call your attention to polling averages again. First, I need to tell you this hour of the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. If you're buying a building, buying a franchise, or need a heavy equipment loan for your business, reach out to First Liberty Building and Loan. They can help any business in the United States. If you got great credit, they can move quick. Look, if you're tired of your bank swapping out your lender all the time, the Frost family's been doing this themselves since the 90s. They'll be there with you. FirstLibertyGA.com. FirstLibertyGA.com. A funny thing happened along the way to this election. Real Clear Politics, back in 2002, began its polling aggregator where it takes all the polls out there and averages them and gives the best historic benchmarks. But they include all the polls. They include the polls that other major members of the media say aren't good polls. They include the partisan polls, and they designate them. Rasmussen and Trafalgar on the Democracy Now! and Data for Progress. They include them all. Turns out, Real Clear Politics is still the best aggregator. What's so notable is that this comes as the New York Times did a hit job on the Real Clear Politics average, and Wikipedia threw them out of their polling aggregator, which was notable. But let me give you the data here at the end. The multi-candidate race for 2024 showed in the Real Clear Politics polling average Donald Trump up 1/10 of a point. The actual outcome, Donald Trump up 1.8 percentage points. In the Trump versus Harris poll, it gave Kamala Harris 1/10 of a point. And again, Trump wound up with 1.8 points ahead. If you know anything about polling understating levels of Trump support, well, then you knew that if Harris was up 1/10 of a point, it was probably Trump's, and Real Clear Politics nailed it. And again, polling averages never get the right number. But Real Clear Politics has done a much better job of getting the right number than any of the other polling aggregators out there. And I got to tell you, go back to 2022, I myself was a little bit skeptical because I felt like some of the Republican pollsters like Trafalgar and the like were maybe throwing results too friendly to the GOP, messing things up. But the Real Clear Politics average turned out better than what everybody was expecting, and it was better than some of the national media outlets. What I find notable is that this little website has been around since 2002 and continues to perform better than the major media outlets and all of their massive resources and all of their massive polling firms that they do. Real Clear Politics is still the best. If you want to find out the trends in this country, the Real Clear Politics polling average is where you have to go to this day, despite the media trying to discredit it in favor of their own products.